Hello, it is a Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. Sorry, I'm really adjusting the mic this time. Alright, but this week, before we get started, I thought it was prescient to mention that none other than the Wes Johnson of sort of BGS voice acting fame. By now, maybe you've actually heard this, but I don't know. It felt like for posterity's sake, I should put it at the start of every, even quasi-relevant video, right? Because we do focus a lot on BGS games, and I specifically have talked about him in a pretty decent amount of detail, as, he's very, very beloved in the sort of BGS realm of video games, right? But he has recently sort of fallen pretty ill. They haven't released any terribly specific information, right? And of course, that's sort of their own prerogative, the family's own prerogative, especially as, the situation develops. But on the 22nd of January, he was found in his hotel room, unconscious and, barely alive. Not great. The only way in which they found him is because he had volunteered for an Alzheimer's charity, and he was supposed to show up to do some hosting for the event, and he never showed up, and thus, sort of a chain of events where people tried to investigate, and eventually that's how they found him. And last I heard, he is currently still in an intensive care unit, but is a lot more stable than he was when this news sort of first broke. So, thank goodness for that. But regardless, the family, his immediate family and all of that, they're sort of reaching out, asking for help. And once again, sort of like I said, this story has been out for a bit now. Like I said, decent chance that you've heard this, but on the off chance you haven't, I'll be spreading it here and there. They put out a GoFundMe page to sort of help cover medical expenses and his leave from work, as he is hopefully going to get better and recover from all of this, right? But they've requested aid, and a lot of people have answered that call, right? I believe last I checked, they have just about over tripled what they originally set out to raise, right? Very good, very, very nice stuff. And hey, so of course, it's not super prescient now, but, this is sort of a person who, if you're anything like me, you've kind of grown up listening to this guy. And Lord knows, if you follow him on social media at all, he's got such a warm, kind, and genuine vibe about him. One that I super duper appreciate. And at the very least, even if you can't help financially, he's decently active on social media. So, hopefully he gets through this, and I'm sure he would love to be greeted by a wellspring of warm wishes and all of that, right? At the very least. But yeah, if you are interested in sort of reading their direct, GoFundMe or whatever, I will put, hopefully I remember to do this, I will put a pinned comment down below where you can access it, right? Of course, it goes without saying, but it's worth saying nonetheless, hopefully a speedy and well recovery. Nonetheless, let's get back on topic here with this week's IRL video. A bit of a simpler one, a bit of an easier one. I've kind of thrown my sleeping pattern into disarray by virtue of being a little under the weather yesterday, and kind of slept in a bit and took a nap, and just kind of thrown into disarray for a bit. So everything running a little bit behind schedule. That said, try not to have a proper schedule. But nonetheless, this week's question comes from a general viewer like you. Their username should be somewhere in the lower third right about now. And as per usual, if you have a question you would like to submit for our IRL videos, feel free to do so. And it helps a ton if you include a question mark in the actual question, right? Helps me Control F and search through YouTube's back-end comment systems. Anyway, this individual, this general viewer asks, a pretty simple question, but one that is a question that contains multitudes. What is your favorite video game mechanics? That is a really wild, open-ended question. So I'll try to be decently, like, broad about it, right? So of course there's so many, like, unique game mechanics that work very well for the games that they're sort of in, you know? A lot of these are less appreciable or less noticeable in more narrative-focused games, right? Because usually it's the writing that takes the front and center and sort of like branching dialogue paths and all of that. So more so it appears in like immersive sim, sort of like sandboxy games, more action-focused ones, right? Case in point, there's tons of games from like, God, what are they called? The Hades dev team. What is their name? They're like Little Big Giant Studios. I forget what their names is. But in particular, I remember Bastion and Transistor especially. Their indie games having some really wild and cool systems for like developing skills and all of that. Hades itself is very enjoyable, but I'm not sure how much of that is a play between mechanics and a play between just like the execution being really good in Hades, I would say. But of course, there's really fascinating stuff like in Soulsborne games, FromSoft, with their little like ghost phantom. They're like quasi multiplayer experience where you can kind of communicate with other players. You can kind of see what they're doing. The sort of invasions. That's really cool. That's really neat. I absolutely love that. Getting killed by random enemies and stuff, and then like you kill them and you get your souls or whatever currency it is back. That's very enjoyable. There's stuff like in Path of Exile 1, Path of Exile 2 maybe less so, but it's still very much in early access, so we'll see how it goes from there. But Path of Exile 1, man, I really loved the skill gem system and sort of taking like an active skill, as it were, and then plugging in a whole bunch of different support skills into it, and the sort of crafting system that takes place in that using the various currencies. I very much enjoyed that. I think that's super duper cool. My goodness, like I said, there's no shortage of really cool mechanics that a lot of games are just kind of like built around either a unique idea, a unique spin, either a completely unique mechanic or a unique spin on a pre-existing mechanic, or just a really good execution of something that has come before, right? Like, for instance, Elder Scrolls games are chock full of different mechanics, right? And sort of having them all playing together, right? This is an interesting look at it, an interesting way to look about the mechanics and all of that. For instance, in an Elder Scrolls game, we can look at Skyrim, right, the most played, or even in Fallout 4, right, for instance. There's so many different mechanics at play. One of the, I think, valid critiques of these games is that these mechanics, these systems, so it could be something like a magic system, a system like settlement building, outpost building, starship building, stuff like that. Even more minute things like being able to sneak and take items from enemies before you fight them, or give them an explosive before you fight them. A lot of these, I think, could be adequately critiqued for being a little bit shallow. But the big takeaway from these games, especially given their sandbox nature, right? And I think this is the big takeaway from a lot of sandbox-focused role-playing games, right? That sort of lean into the more immersive experience. The idea, I think the throughput of it all, is that the sum of all these parts, should be greater than all of them individually, right? What's the turn of phrase? What's the idiom? Gosh, I can't even remember right now off the top of my head, but you know what I'm talking about, where on their own, they're perhaps a little flimsy. They're not enough quite to do it. But just the sheer breadth of systems working in tandem, absolutely amazing. A lot of sandboxy games sort of are amazing at this, right? For instance, my favorite stealth video game probably of all time, I would go so far as to say, Metal Gear Solid 5, or V, whichever you prefer, sort of has a ton of wild systems in it, right? This is part and parcel why I enjoy it so much, because it gives you such a breadth of different ways to approach everything, right? There's so many different approaches. There's so many different like viable ways to go about it. And they have like a challenge system set up to sort of get you to hopefully think about it in a different way. That's part of a big reason why I really, really enjoyed that game, right? Sort of just a whole bunch of things working together in tandem, right? That in and of itself is very enjoyable for me, I would say. So we've touched on a lot of different concepts of like what makes, like, you know, there's unique mechanics that particularly fit a game very well. There's games that have a ton of different mechanics that are decent to amazing, but sort of what really makes them shine is that they all come together, hopefully, and put on like a spectacular display for the game itself. But if we really want to narrow things down, right, if we want to get into something very, very granular, we could go back to something like what I guess I would say immediately, if someone just asked me, what's your favorite video game mechanic? I guess I would say, I would give you two answers, right? Okay, I would give you two answers right off the top of my head. I would say the double jump, right? A lot of games that I even play won't even let you jump, won't even let you double jump, no less. But there is something to be said about a game with a very satisfying double jump. There is no denying that, man, it is really fun to do a double jump. The ways in which you execute it, of course, vary across games, but sort of as just like a widespread idea, man, I love a good double jump. A triple jump is sometimes okay, but in some situations, perhaps, the double jump feels superior, right? When I played and messed around a bit in Destiny, this was a big part of me deciding, oh, I will play a hunter class because they had a double jump or triple jump. That was a huge reason for me to go that route, is because I was like, well, this is just the superior way to jump, right? This is just the best way to do it. And, you know, you get, there's also interesting play with a double jump in that, like, you know, if you're playing sort of a platformer, a 2D one, like, you know, does jumping on top of an enemy and defeating them or whatever, does that refresh your double jump? You have it to where, even in 3D spaces, right, you can have, like, something else, a different effect proc, or go off, I should say, when you double jump. You can have it to where something super satisfying that I love doing with a double jump, even in like a first-person game, really taking me back to my time playing a whole bunch of Team Fortress 2. I mained Scout in TF2, which is probably part and parcel why I love double jumping so much, because that was the only character class that could double jump in that game. There were different areas which you could access by way of being able to double jump or triple jump or rocket jump or sticky jump, as it were, right? There were a few ways to get around, but there were different parts of the map that you could really only access, or different shortcuts you could take by way of being able to double jump. But one of the more satisfying things I like, and this, like I said, this applies to a lot of games that have a double jump, it is when you kind of do it, you begin a jump, or even you just fall, you just walk yourself off of a platform, right? And you kind of fall for a bit, right? But then you jump a little bit, right? You're not looking for verticality, you're looking more so for distance. So like imagine you're like you're running off of a bridge or whatever, and then you kind of, you jump, but then you go below the level where you initiated your jump, or you just like run off and let yourself fall. And then you kind of do another jump at the end just to like barely reach a ledge or a platform or something. There is something incredibly cool and satisfying feeling about doing that, right? I can't explain it. I've seen other people do it in games with double jumping, and I think we just have to own up that it rocks, that it's dope as hell, right? Doing a double jump where you end up being like a little bit lower for your second jump, for the double jump from your starting position, that feels amazing, right? It's so cool. You feel so cool. You feel like, man, I'm so relaxed. I'm so chill about double jumping. I don't even worry about it. I let myself slip a little bit, right? But not because I care, because I'm looking cool doing it, right? And, you know, sometimes it throws off, like, if it's a competitive game, sometimes it throws off someone who's trying to shoot at you because they don't expect it. A lot of people will expect, oh, you'll just maximize efficiency, try to get ultimate height, right? But yeah, very much enjoy that, especially when, like I said, different effects can proc upon you double jumping. Maybe you can, like, really change around your trajectory, right? You can just jump around like a 90-degree corner, right, into a complete blind spot. That's very fun as well. It's probably double jump, right? If I had to go with a mechanic that's very unique, right, that not a lot of people are aware of, I would probably go with, right, something that a lot of people, like, if I wanted to give a very interesting answer, right, if I wanted to go with one that really, like, was more, I don't know, provocative, I guess, as it were, I would say skiing. People who maybe know what I'm talking about will immediately be like, oh yeah, skiing rocks. But I'm specifically talking about skiing in the Tribes games. I played a little bit of Tribes, but mostly I played Tribes Ascend. It is, the marketing for it is the fastest first-person shooter on the planet, or something like that. But sort of the way in which it functions is it's very sci-fi. It's sort of an arena shooter, but you are built for speed. Speed and accuracy. The way in which it functions in this game is you're a little guy. Everybody is some type of guy, some type of little guy. Some of the little guys are a lot faster. Some of them a bit tougher, but they're slower, but they can still accomplish this. So what you do skiing in these games is the way in which all of the levels are set up. There are just loads of hills and valleys and just slopes everywhere. You sort of activate your skiing ability. You turn off friction on your feet or something. It's such a wild thing. It's so difficult to even explain. But okay, imagine this. Your starting point is like a spaceship or whatever. You jump out of the spaceship, immediately down below, there's like, I don't know, a 90-degree incline hill, right? It's all grassy and stuff and all that. You jump at it, you go and hit it, you turn on your skiing, right? You go into skiing mode, and then as you slide down the slope, you're building up more speed. And then you can sort of activate it to where, as you are sliding down, you're building up so much speed, and then you come up the slope, and then you start to fly off the ground. You activate like a jet booster or whatever the heck, or even you do like a rocket jump. It's not necessarily a rocket jump in this game, but you do an explosion jump to where you lose friction going upward, and then you keep hitting more and more slopes and going faster and faster down more and more slopes. All the while, you're trying to like capture the enemy flag. You're trying to intercept an enemy, right? And you're using these like incredibly accurate, but also projectile-based explosive weapons. There were also, I think in Tribes Ascend, there were just like straight up hit scan, like railgun things. I think they were hit scan. I can't quite remember, but man, it was so wild. The speed at which you could get to, God, it was so fun. I highly implore you, like, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, like, this is such a difficult concept to even, like, explain. But I would highly implore you, at least look up, like, Tribes Ascend, right? The sort of the newest one, which is no longer active as far as I know. I don't know. I think they're trying to get another Tribes game going, but unfortunately, these sorts of games just are not that terribly popular, so I don't know, we'll see how it goes, but, God, skiing is so dope. I sometimes talk about in playthroughs whenever, like, I see a big slope or whatever, I just want to, like, ski down it and get, like, a ton of speed built up, and then just sort of, like, fling myself back up off of some other, like, slope going upward and just sort of fly off of stuff. God, it's so cool. I don't know how else to describe it other than this like wavy motion. Oh man, it feels amazing, and the game itself, it's like impossible to land a shot. It's so difficult. The skill. Look, I'm combining everything with skiing. The skill floor is unfortunately kind of high because of it, right? Even learning to ski in the first place is a feat in and of itself. And then you factor in, okay, I need to land a shot with a projectile-based explosive on another enemy who is probably also skiing, right? It becomes so wild. It becomes so ridiculously wild. Like I said, I implore you to look up skiing. It's probably my favorite unique mechanic just by the sheer nature of it being so fast and so wild. I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it, but skiing. Wow, look into it. It's so wild. Maybe I don't know. At some point, I should just like, maybe if that new one that they're working on actually does make it out the front door, maybe we'll do a little something here in the channel, just because of this video, because of me sort of gushing about how much joy I take from skiing. Right? It's so wild. And you can do it off of like any incline in the game, right? It doesn't have to be like a grassy hill. It could be like, I don't know, like a big ramp made of metal or whatever. Just as long as it's that kind of incline, you turn on the skiing, you push the skiing button, and you start skiing, baby. Man, it's so cool. It is so cool. There's really nothing else like it, and I don't even know how you come to arrive at the idea that you should have this in your game, right? It's such a out there, far-fetched sort of mechanic. It doesn't really even exist in any other games. It's, as far as I know, it's just only ever been Tribes, but man, it makes it go so fast. And holy cow, I love a fast FPS. I love one where maybe not necessarily your time to kill is very quick, right? Where you die very quick, but your character, sort of in the arena shooters of old, you're super duper fast, right? Man, I love that. That's probably it. Skiing and double jumping, if I had to pick. That ought to do it for this week, I think. As I had mentioned before, feel free to submit other questions if you would like. Until next time, please take care of each other.